All right, how's everybody doing tonight? All right, we are week 8, believe it or not. This week is chapter 8, and Thursday you're going to be doing a risk identification on RBCs. And I do this each semester. We cover security and inventory, the security components as it pertains to RBC's account and password policies here on campus. And you're going to do some, so when we come in Thursday, I kind of rehash this. I'm not going to keep you real long Thursday. We'll go over this again on what I expect you to do, and you'll take it home to do the lab basically, because you'll have some time to do some research. But basically what you're going to do is inventory the assets and attributes, determine what threat agents exist against these attributes, what vulnerabilities exist, make decisions in regard to what to do. The scenario is RBC account password policy. That link takes you to our RBC account policy or page, RBC page, my RBC. It's up to you to determine where this is found at. You see if you can find it yourself as a new student on campus maybe, or somebody just visiting the website. Are you able to find that policy? So that's one of your duties. So when a person registers RBC, they're given an account for Eagle, email communication, online services. Questions you'll ask yourself is an RBC account password policy secure? How can it be exploited? Do students around Rock Valley know how to change their password? And so what you'll do is ask people that you have classes with, just in general, hey, do you guys know how to change your password? Can you help me? And I don't know, or I don't know, call IT or go somewhere. Or I just kind of feel what people say. And then do students know what a secure password is? Again, that same person, you could say, I'm really wanting to make a secure password. I don't know, what to put in. Do you have any ideas or tips maybe to help me out? And so your take home will basically be doing that. We'll go over more on Thursday on that. It'll just be a one-page summary of your thoughts on the RBC password policy. And is it secure? What's the assets? What's the dangers? What's the things we can do to tackle these assets, these dangers, these exploits or possible exploits? Are there some things we cannot do anything about, or some things maybe we could do some stuff about? So we'll talk more about that on Thursday. So that'll be your take home, along with the normal review questions and quiz. Tonight we're going to cover in Chapter 8 wireless security, and wireless security as it pertains to different types of Wi-Fi and what type of security can be wrapped on a Wi-Fi connection, and some of the attacks maybe that can occur on a Wi-Fi. We've talked a little bit about it already this semester with the man in the middle, which that's a real popular way for hackers to get information from folks, is through a man in the middle through Wi-Fi. So it's just terminology this week on Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi security. It's ever changing and growing. So we'll look at the different Wi-Fi attacks, what IEEE 802.11 is, and some of the vulnerabilities, and some solutions you can do, simple ones you can do to secure a wireless network. So introduction here is wireless data communications have revolutionized computer networks. If you think about it, what did we do before Wi-Fi? Maybe some people, in fact, I know students, been here long enough now, to know students that doesn't remember without Wi-Fi. They don't remember a world without it, literally. They've always had it. And so you and I, most of us in here, maybe not you, remember the days of no Wi-Fi, right? No Wi-Fi. And we'll be one day soon where it'll be 100% of campus. We'll never, even employees, will never remember a day where there was no Wi-Fi. Well, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. And so it hasn't been around that long, though. Wi-Fi has not been around that long. Well, if you think about it, networking has not been around that long. And so networks in general. We're still in the infancy stage when it comes to, you know, mid 80s, early 80s is when everything started in networking. You know, early 80s, really commercially, and you know, people started really using it heavily. So that's not that long ago. And so we're in the infancy stage when it comes to everything when it pertains to networking, security, and we are definitely light years away from when we started. But imagine what it's going to be like 50 years from now or 20 years from now. And what's, for IT folks, what the challenge is, things change quicker each year. And really, you could probably even say each month, they change quicker, exponentially change. So what maybe took 10 years ago, let's say 5 years ago, a month for something to filtrate the web, like say a virus or a malware, might take seconds now, okay? And that's why these antivirus companies, and we're just a story tonight before class, so the phone getting attacked. And so a lot of times these attacks that come through, the antivirus companies have no clue it's out there yet. And that's how quick it is. And so, you know, it's wireless is just one more component though on top of that security. Security, you could call it mesh of stuff that's out there. Because we not only have hardware, we now have hardwired, but we now have wireless as well to deal with when it comes to security. So wireless networks are everywhere. When people use them everywhere. It's in your cars now, vans. They just promoted this last 2 weeks. A brand new van just came out. It was on built-in Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi WPA2 home security. You know, it's just built into it. Wireless networks have been targets for attackers because they're easy to attack. I just sent Lou tonight a link from our ethical hacking. Over the summer in May, we did one on Wardriving. I'll write the web address. You guys can go there sometime. It's whitehats.us. Whitehats.us, I believe. Whitehats.us gives, let me make sure that's the correct address. So I don't know if the S is in there or not. Maybe White Hats, yeah, it'll redirect to the WordPress site. But on White Hats, if you go to whitehats.us, it has a Wardriving tab. And in the Wardriving tab goes over step by step the steps we did in the lab when we did this in this classroom. Actually, we met here on a Saturday. We put together the apps on the different devices that students had. And there's even community members that came for this. So we had Windows 7 users, XP, Linux users, we had Mac, we had Droids, we had iOS devices. And there's different apps, as you can see, for all these different devices that you can load. And then once you go out with these apps on the road, it then begins collecting data and saving data. Like here's an example of a dump after a run has been done. This is actually dumped into a spreadsheet, and it gives MAC address. It gives the type of router it was upon, whether it's open or closed, what security was on, N or G, and then this was just a time frame of when it was found. It also gives the infrastructure as well as security. And so you can actually take this a step further. And I think Lou and I was talking about this last week. You can take this spreadsheet and dump it into a mapping site like Google Maps, Google Earth, and it would put the pins on it and show you all of the components of that hack as far as where these points are on the road as you were driving. And so whitehats.us, I think on that drive we did, and then I'll go on. It said here, I put in here, we did with a 5-mile radius, we had about 6 of us. We had 4 quadrants that we drove, a 5-mile radius of this campus. We had 33,245 access points that were grabbed. WPA was, let's see if I can blow this up some. WPA was 26,831. WEP, 6,414. Open, totally open, 19%. Around 20% was open, and the rest 80% was WPA. 20% though is pretty good size of open connections within 5 miles of here.
Wow.
It's crazy. Get a chance to look at that. There's a video. I won't play it here, but this video is pretty cool here, by the way. These are professional hackers that go out, and it's for educational purposes. The buzzword for years has been for what we're doing in here called ethical hacking, but I like the term anti-hacking better than ethical hacking, but they'll use the word ethical hacking in the video, and these guys train people of things that can be done and actually show you the apps that they were used, so that's beneficial. There's a lot of other stuff on that website that you'd like. So whitehats.us, and white hats refers to, in the hacker world, you have two families of hackers, white hat and black hat hackers. And it goes back to the days of cowboys and Indians, where you had good cowboys who wore the white hats and the bad cowboys wore the black hats, the bandits. And so that's where it comes from. Both families or both types of groups were very knowledgeable in what they could do, both in war and also in, combat. But the difference was the white hat hackers were the good guys that tried to save their communities and save their women and children and be law-abiding citizens. So objectives on wireless networks tonight, as far as attacks go, is there are vulnerabilities in the IEEE 802.11, which is the family of security it's called through IEEE. That's what it's called, 802.11 document, white paper. Anything to do with Wi-Fi, that's what you're going to find. And look at some solutions. So let's look at the first on type of attack, Bluetooth. Everybody knows about Bluetooth, right? Most people, when I talk about Bluetooth, they think of speakers. They think of, that's about it. Oh yeah, headsets. I'm sorry, headsets. Yeah, headsets, right? And that's about it. But you can actually set up a PAN network, a personal area network with Bluetooth as well, by connecting laptop to laptop, laptop to cell phone with just Bluetooth to connect for purposes of networks. An example would be the new watches that are out, right? From the all the little watch bands that are out now to the new Apple Watch coming up. That's going to be that all talks through Bluetooth networks. And so what it is, it's a short range radio frequency, provides rapid ad hoc device pairing for smartphone, Bluetooth headsets, headphones. And the network is actually called PAN, Personal Area Network. Two types of Bluetooth network topologies is PicoNet and ScatterNet. And so here's some examples of Bluetooth products and some of their usage. In the automobile, hopefully everybody's doing this, hands-free in Illinois, right? It's the law, but I don't know how many people I see. I mean, it's crazy. It's like, I never see anybody pulled over. I know they do probably, but I just never see anybody get arrested for it. But hands-free systems, which drivers should be using, could speak commands through the browser, browse the cell phone's contacts, home entertainment, might have, say, a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth entertainment set up through portable speakers for wireless speakers from your TV, and maybe have some woofers and subwoofers that are wireless and a big bar or something on your TV. You've seen the flat bars they use for sound, usually talk upon Bluetooth. Photography, digital printers, digital cameras with printers. Digital photos can be sent directly from the photo printer from pictures taken from the cell phone. If you go to Walmart and you have a cell phone that has Bluetooth that lets you send pictures to these devices like Kodak, it'll let you do that. Computer accessories, keyboard, mouse, Bluetooth. Gaming, all your controllers, Bluetooth. Headsets, Bluetooth. Sports and fitness, heart rate monitors and wrist watches, Bluetooth. medical devices, blood pressure monitors with smartphones, Bluetooth. The list goes on and on of different Bluetooth devices out there. So let's talk about the attacks on Bluetooth. PicoNet's the first one it talks about, which is established when two Bluetooth devices come in range of each other. So if you have your Bluetooth turned on, which most people do, even though everybody's told if you're not using Bluetooth, turn it off because it sucks battery. Well, if you're using one or two devices a day periodically throughout the day, it's a headache to turn Bluetooth off because it just is. I don't do it because, you know, I use 2 or 3 devices a day that uses Bluetooth. Like in my truck, I have a 41 Chevy. It doesn't have speakers. It doesn't have a nice stereo. I've got a wireless speaker that I turn on when I get in, and I stream my music to it through Bluetooth. Okay, I use that. And at the house, I've got some Bluetooth headsets I use. And so, you know, periodically throughout the day, I use Bluetooth. And so I keep it on like most people do. The danger of that is, because most of us do keep our Bluetooth on, attackers can use it because once you come in range of Bluetooth, you can connect or attempt to connect without the user knowing that you're connecting. And basically what happens is this: on a PicoNet, one device, like a master, controls all wireless network. The other devices become a slave. The active slaves can send transmissions. Park slaves are connected but are not actively participating. So here's an example of a PicoNet. You've got a master with multiple slaves, and then you could have a park slave out there that's not really being used for anything. And so an example on this one, let's talk about, you know, we could actually use this in the realm of speakers for an example. Say you have a device that uses Bluetooth and it's connected to 4 speakers. Okay, 4 speakers are the slave. The device is a master, connecting Bluetooth connectivity for sound to go out. And you might have walked through a store maybe that has these type of speakers, and your Bluetooth starts going crazy. You look at it, it's got a whole list of Bluetooth stuff there to connect to. Then ScatterNet is basically just a group of PicoNets with connections between different PicoNets, which brings us to bluejacking, which is an attack that sends unsolicited messages to Bluetooth-enabled devices. Like, these unsolicited messages could be text messages, images, and sound. I know Droid has some apps out there that allows users, we'll say the black hat hacker types, or even the white hat hackers just wants to annoy people, to send stuff to phones around them that Bluetooth turned on, unbeknownst to the people around them. And it could be pictures that maybe they don't want to see. It could be sounds they don't want to hear, messages they don't want to read. Okay, it's basically just for fun, is what the apps, you know, just for entertainment is what it says on the apps mainly. And so no data generally is stolen in these. It's just, again, bluejacking. It's popular, by the way. It is used a lot in high schools, middle schools, in the Droid family phones, because these apps are out there targeting droids basically with these apps. So here's an example of a Bluetooth ScatterNet. You've got a couple masters there, and what connects them here is the slave. There might be one slave connecting to 2 masters, and it's going to sync them together and sync that network together to make a ScatterNet. Blue snarfing is basically unauthorized access to wireless information through Bluetooth connection. This is often between cell phone and laptops. The attacker can, in this case, do some malicious stuff. They can get emails, contacts, or other data connected to Bluetooth device without the owner's knowledge, like pictures is an example, because most all your phones tie specifically when you go to send a picture. One of the options I know on Droids are Bluetooth. iPhone doesn't have the option for Bluetooth, but Droids do have the option for Bluetooth to send over Bluetooth. And that's for security purposes, by the way. Why Apple didn't open up Bluetooth for sending anything was because of that very reason. But there's tons of apps out there that allow blue snarfing to occur on Droids. And Droids can, to have the right app, can connect to any laptop that has Bluetooth turned on, even Macs, Mac laptops and PCs, to get this data. If like on my Mac, my Bluetooth's pretty much always on. On Windows laptops, pretty much the Bluetooth's always on and open. And so if you have the right app and it connects to that, and you know, on Bluetooth, like on your phone, you might note that on the Bluetooth settings, you can say always searching, constantly searching for whatever new Bluetooth masters out there. Well, if you have the right app, it grabs onto that app basically, and then the app says, okay, I'm your master. Then it starts doing the dirty stuff. Then it starts collecting data, connecting you know, emails, pictures, whatever the case may be. A lot of times too on this blue snarfing, it's just getting data like, say, for instance, IP addresses, IP address range, name of the phone, name of the laptop for future exploits for later on. IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, most influential organization for computer networking, dates back all the way back to 1884. They began developing networks, to answer your question earlier, in the 80s, because that's when really computers and networks and networking really began to flourish. It started before that, but that's whenever these guys came in, because it started hitting commercial markets, businesses, and a few consumers, but mostly universities and large businesses had it at that point. In 1997, IEEE released 802.11. That's your answer to the wireless. 1997. That's not that long ago. Not that long ago, right? This is 2014, so 17 years. Wow. Most people think Wi-Fi has been around forever. I think I do too at times, but it's not. So we've been around 17 years. And so standard for wireless local LANs is this 802.11 standard. They have higher speeds that were added in 99. That gave you, well, it doesn't say on here, but 802.11a was the first one. Then B came, okay, in 99. Make it a little faster. It does do A here. A was 54 megabits per second, 5 megahertz spectrum. G, preserves stable and widely accepted features of B, increases data transfer rate, similar to 802.11a. And then 802.11n, which most users use at home today, 2009 is when that came out and was ratified, so not that long for that as well. And that's what most home users have. These are, like if you buy a router that's N, most of them are backward compatible, or they do what's called mixed mode, meaning if you have devices, which most of you do, that have maybe a G card, it won't work in N only. You would set up your Wi-Fi router to be in mixed mode to connect to both devices that have N or G, either one. The downside to that is if you do a mixed mode in Wi-Fi, you degrade the speeds of that network. If you've ever worked in true N and worked in mixed mode and do like a speed test, you'll see a big difference when it comes to just data speed, pure data speed. It's quite a bit difference. So 802.11n added improvements in speed, coverage area, interference, and security. Now, interference had to do with it would actually bounce a little better around walls, ceilings, still not steel structures, or electrical. Still not going to be able to go through that for the most part. Be interference to that, and then definitely increase security with N. Definitely increase security. That's where we have the WPA2 that we have currently, started in the N family. Wireless client network interface card that all your devices have, both laptop, phones, some desktops might have them. It might have a Wi-Fi card in it. I know a couple schools here in town that had one of these modular trailers for like a reading trailer, or I think this was like to read stories to kids or something. Well, it was about 50 feet from the building. They didn't want one wire, and so we just set out there, and all the computers had, we installed wireless NIC cards on all the computers, and it worked great. Had issues during storms and things like that, but for the most part, it worked fine. Just put an access point close to the wall in the inside of the building that was in proximity to the trailer that was sitting out. And so if you have to add new computers in your home, or you want to put one in your basement and don't want to run Cat5, you can install a Wi-Fi card, NIC card in your desktop, or get a USB to Wi-Fi as well. Works as well. And all the providers make them. Intel, Cisco makes them. D-Link makes them. Linksys, which is owned by Cisco. So basically what the Wi-Fi card does is performs the same functions you're wired, all right? The antenna, though, sends and receives signals, whereas your Cat5 cables sends and receives signals as well through wire. This one goes over the air. And also you could imagine, because it's over the air, you're going to have interference. You can have interference through microwaves turning on, garage door openings, some of your remotes on your TV, even some of your cell phones, depending on the cell phone you've got, what frequency it falls on. Because all these Wi-Fi channels, we'll talk more about it, fall on a certain gigahertz channel. And gigahertz, all you need to know about gigahertz tonight is, it's kind of like air traffic controlling, which has been in the news a lot lately with our hub going down here in the Midwest. The guy that tried to commit suicide and brought down the whole Midwest hub. So basically, the way gigahertz work simply described is, we'll say these are airplanes in the sky, and they're about 2,000 feet apart in the sky, circling to land here, here or something down the runway. And the reason they have to be apart is so they don't collide. And so part of the job of the air traffic controller is to make sure these planes are all separate spectrums, ranges. Same with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, we could say these lines of airplanes could actually be different gigahertz. This is a crude example, but I'm going to just do 1, 0. These are all representing gigahertz, we'll say. Okay, different levels of gigahertz fall upon a different wavelength in the sky, in the air that you can't see. Police scanners have certain gigahertz. Emergency certain gigahertz. Cell phones certain gigahertz. Cellular phones certain gigahertz. Trying to think of what else. Your gaming systems, your speakers at home, your wireless telephones at home, all have certain gigahertz that they fall upon, where they don't talk and crosstalk one to another. An example is on Wi-Fi networks at home, is a lot of your desktop sets have the ability to do like Netflix, right, in the system, in the box, right? And a lot of times those gigahertz will be different from the gigahertz on your static Wi-Fi router. So say your Wi-Fi router's on a 2.4 gigahertz channel. Most of these boxes are going to fall upon a 5 gigahertz channel, to where they never touch each other on the network. They never collide. And so that's what gigahertz basically is. There's more to it than that, but that's the reason gigahertz exists. One of the reasons is to have different levels of gigahertz is for the traffic to fall and to flow on separate levels in the air. Same with Wi-Fi. So access points, in order to have Wi-Fi, you need to have access points. It's a major part of the system. If we didn't have access points, we wouldn't have Wi-Fi to the extent we have it today. We could set up ad hoc Wi-Fi, but it wouldn't have it to the extent we have it today. So it's an antenna and radio transmitter receiver that sends and receives signals. There's bridging software to interface the wireless devices to other devices. Wired networks interfaces does allow you to connect by cable to a standard wired network. And so what this is saying is, in an access point, you generally have Wi-Fi capability to connect devices to that Wi-Fi access point or Wi-Fi router. But you also have, usually most of these access points, ports in the back to hardwire 3 or 4 ports to gaming systems, your Wii, your Xbox, whatever. You would never want, by the way, to work over Wi-Fi for any type of, if you can get away with it anyway, you can do it, but it's degraded over a Wi-Fi system over these systems I just mentioned, like a Wii or an Xbox or whatever, because you would get degraded speeds. And if you're doing a first-person shooter game, that just means you're going to get killed quicker if you're on Wi-Fi versus wired. The functions of an access point acts as a base station for the wireless network. And so we have here an example of, we'll say it's a Linksys access point there in the middle, and it's connected to a wired network, you'll notice at the top, with a file server, PCs, internet, but it also is now connecting these wireless laptops to that wired network through the access point, all right? So if I was to bring an access point in here tonight, plug it into our existing infrastructure here in the room, I could then set up my access point to cast out not only IP addresses, but everybody connected to it could then get internet and network connectivity because I'm plugged into our network. That makes sense? And so that's where I guess today in corporate IT, one of the, and it's so prevalent to buy, I mean, you can buy, I've got access points that are literally the size of a USB thumb drive. You plug it in to your USB port, and within seconds, it sets up a access point that anybody around it can connect to. And the way I use it is when I'm doing conferences or something, a lot of times they don't have good Wi-Fi, but they'll have good wired connection somewhere. I'll plug in my USB router, it's just a little white stick, into a working machine that can then give me access to internet, which I need for showing stuff on the web, things of that nature. But it can be used for evil too, because you can actually have these things. This piece of item only actually cost like 15 bucks. I think I might have it with me. Most students haven't seen these before. You guys have seen access points you guys have at home, but I'll show you one if I have it in here. I usually try to keep it with me. I have two of them actually. Yeah, I'll pass them both around. One's called Windy 31, and it actually says on here wireless router. The other one is called IO Crest. That's a company. It's a wireless pocket router access point. I'll pass that on. You just plug these in to any workable USB port that's connected to the internet on that machine, and it sets up an access point within seconds. The white one's a newer one. The black one's an older one. The white one costs about 15 bucks. The black one costs about 20 bucks. But that's an access point you can plug in. So let's look at some access point functions that can act as a bridge between wired and wireless networks. In fact, the device I'm passing around, that's what it does. When you plug it into the USB port on the machine, if you look at the networking area of that Windows machine, you'll actually see a bridge be created and connected to this device or devices to get it internet connectivity and network connectivity. Autonomous access points is basically where it's separate from other network devices and access points and have necessary intelligence for wireless authentication, encryption, and management. And basically the autonomous access points are generally used for secure areas where you want it separate from all other network devices, and it could be specifically designed for certain devices. Let's say an example in the hospital, you might want certain devices to talk upon a wireless network, but no other devices can talk to that wireless network. So say it's a tablet device, or say it's some type of handheld scanner or something that folks use in the hospital. Well, you can lock down, we'll find out in a second how to do that, your access point for just certain MAC addresses, and then everything else can't connect. And so that's one way to secure it. These are what you guys have at home for the most part, is your broadband routers, wireless broadband routers. Basically, it's a single hardware device containing an access point, firewall, router, and DHCP server, all built in. And so you set up the name, you change the administrator password, you say how many PCs or how many connections you want to create. By default, most of them have like 50 to 100. We'll talk about why you want to maybe limit that. You can change the IP range from out of the box, which you can make it a little bit more secure. because all these routers have a default IP range they give you out of the box, like a 192.168.1.1 or 172.168.1.254 is an example. You can change that. It doesn't have to be that way. Wireless networks have been vulnerable to attacks for attackers because it's not restricted to a cable. And so a lot of investigation, a lot of research, a lot of playtime can be done with these and have been to find out ways to attack these devices. So type of wireless LAN attacks are like discovering the network, okay? Attacking through what's called the RF spectrum on the Wi-Fi channel as it's going across the air. There's a spectrum that is in that spectrum certain keys, certain codes that if you have the right software, like Cain Enable as an example, that you can discover with that discovery part of Cain Enable, if you're on a Wi-Fi access point or Wi-Fi machine, like a laptop running Cain Enable, you can suck down as much data as possible. And the way attacks work on Wi-Fi is you want to get as much data down as possible. So you might let it sit out there for 10, 15 minutes while you are actually on that network, searching something, searching the web, having everybody else search the web, because the more data that is being active on that network, the better chance of passwords being cracked and getting into that access point. And so we'll talk more about that later. And by the way, the website, whitehats.us, that's part of the attack that we talk about. It also involves access points on LAN attacks. So discovery network, attacking RF spectrum, attacking involving access points. The discovery network is kind of like we've done with Wireshark here on the wired side. It's one of the first stuff attacker does is discover the networks that are out there, the Wi-Fi networks, right? Well, even if they're hidden, let's say the SSID is hidden, which you can do when you set up an access point. There's software out there like NetStumbler. Doesn't matter if it's hidden, it'll find it. Tons of mobile apps out there that'll find even the hidden ones. So that's the first thing hackers will do is discover all the access points that are around them, whether it's in that building or as we did in the whitehats.us site, a war drive, where you drive around the city for a period of time and see what you can collect, and then come back and map it out. What's open, what's not open, and then what's your plan of attack. Beaconing is basically where the access point sends regular intervals, and all access points do this, by the way, its presence to be known. Wireless device scans for these beaconing frames. And then wardriving is where you have the process of passive discovery of a wireless network location. And again, you're just driving. NetStumbler would be a good example of an app that does that. And basically, as you drive down the road, it's collecting data as you're driving down the road, collecting IP addresses, collecting SSIDs, geolocations, exactly where it's at. And then when you come back, it pinpoints on a map, and then you can color. A lot of these will actually color code the pins. So say green is open, red is locked, secure maybe, WPA, WPA2. But wardriving is very popular still today. Mostly wardriving used to be in laptops, right, with antennas on top of your car. Today it's mostly done with mobile phones, and specifically Droids. iOS has some, but iOS has to be jailbroken to use it for these apps to work. But Droids have a lot of good apps, and on that website, whitehats.us, talks about some of those apps that are out there. So let's look at wardriving tools. Mobile computing device, mobile computer with a wireless NIC, and it could be a tablet, it could be a phone, smartphone, wireless NIC adapter. Many wardrivers prefer external wireless NIC adapter because they're more powerful, into a USB port, and then use an extended antenna on top of the car, like say a 10-foot antenna or a 5-foot antenna or whatever on top of the car. It will get a wider range and of access points. The antennas, although all wireless NIC cards are embedded antennas, attaching an external antenna will significantly increase the ability to detect wireless signal. Software, tons of software out there to discover WLAN, serious war. Drivers use more specific software like NetStumbler as an example. Global positioning system receiver. A lot of times you can buy Wardrivers will take and not only have the external USB Wi-Fi card, but they'll also have an external GPS USB as well, to where these apps can, like NetStumbler, can get not only the SSID, but at the same time get the GPS coordinates of that SSID while they're driving, and share it with others. War chalking is basically documenting and advertising of the wireless LANs. If you go over that tutorial and the information on the website I put up there, it's got tons of sites out there for public use for people to post war driving results to the public to see. So the time we did it, one of the faculty that lives over here had an open connection, and I told her about it. She said, "Oh, I thought it was secure." I'm like, "Nope." And so she made sure and set it up and put it to the, I think she ended up putting WPA on there, but it was totally open. And begin, because one of the things that's going to happen, and it's kind of, most people, I guess maybe in the back of mind know this, but let's say somebody was come by your house and it's open Wi-Fi, open WEP or easy WEP crack key or whatever, and they got in and they started doing illegal stuff. We'll say the illegal stuff is they post, and this happens, by the way, all the time. They post an ad on Craigslist for a car, a sale of a car, all right, through your Wi-Fi access point. And this happens in Chicago, by the way, all the time. They tell the people on Craigslist, if you want to buy this car, come by this place at such and such a time, and you can look at it, and we'll do the transaction there, and it's usually real cheap or whatever. Well, a lot of times what happens is people show up to look at the car, and they get the money stolen from them. And sometimes beat up, and sometimes worse stuff happens to them. Well, police today, especially Chicago PD, Rockford has it too, higher level of IT folks and law enforcement, can take that email. They'll want that email from that person that they got from Craigslist, right? Trace the IP address of that IP address fairly easily from an email. Well, guess what? It comes back to my house maybe because it's open. I have an open connection. I'm now on that. I'm now part of the. I'm now part of the paper trail or the digital trail of that theft, of that activity. And I had nothing to do with it, but I had an open connection. Well, you have to prove. I have to prove I didn't do it. I'm guilty already, just because it happened. I have to prove it. And this happens, by the way, more often than you think. By the way, even in Rockford.
I think it's going to happen more now that Xfinity's got the open wireless. They set it up on every personal user's own wireless.
Yes, you're right.
An SSD for customers.
Yes, you're right. There will be more of it. There will be more of it. And so because open access points are out there so prevalent, stuff like you just mentioned, stuff I just mentioned with Craigslist is going to happen more and more. And so, and then, you're having to prove to authorities that you didn't do it, which is very difficult to do because they have the evidence right there, black and white, that was your IP address and it happened at such and such a time. And so, the reason I tell you that is if you don't have a secure access point at home, make sure, after going through these steps tonight, hopefully some of these steps will help you. Because I know most of you have like WPA set up, I'm guessing, or you have, hopefully some password protection. But there's other things you can do too to help you from hackers getting into your network. Just easy stuff to do. So war chalking basically is where you document and advertise, previously done by drawing, like on sidewalks and walls around a network area. Today, locations are posted on websites. There's multiple websites you can post data to. So like, for instance, NetStumbler. There's a couple other ones I put on the website, whitehats.us, that we used, where it was an app actually that you collect the data, and then when you're done collecting the data, you push submit, and it says, do you want to put on website? You say yes, it posts all that information on the website. of the entire Wardriving incident that you just did for folks to see. And the way they promote on the website is they're promoting free Wi-Fi for people that come into the area. That's how they're promoting it. Free Wi-Fi for people that want an area. And by the way, there are consumers, like in New York, there's a whole community that 3 or 4 city blocks, that's their intent, is to give free Wi-Fi to everybody in that area. They want to share it. And it's their right to share if they want to. It's their internet. They're paying for it. And so you will find communities or small neighborhoods around the nation that want that. And so because of that, though, that's, I believe, going to cause and could cause some problems and has caused some problems. So here's some symbols used on Ward chalking symbols. Like if it's a closed network, it's a circle. If it's, bandwidth is open, it'll be a circle flipped in the middle. And then bandwidth is encrypted, it'll be a circle with a W in the middle. So attacks to RF spectrum, we talk about RF spectrum. The way RF spectrums are attacked is there is things called wireless protocol analyzers that will go out, like Kismet will go out, and Kismet will look at and Kismet's found for laptops, mobile devices. It'll analyze the spectrum, the RF spectrum, and then, but basically what it does then is generates interference. And you might have heard of these called Wi-Fi blockers or Wi-Fi scramblers. That might be one you've heard of maybe. There's actually been some local businesses try to use this in like churches and business waiting rooms where they don't want people to use Wi-Fi at all, or cellular at all. You can scramble it through the RF spectrum. If you have it, you can buy these little black boxes online. It'll scramble cellular and scramble any RF spectrum whatsoever, which will include cellular and include Wi-Fi. And by the way, that's illegal. FCC has noted that as being illegal. You can't do that. Because if you could do that legally, airplanes would do it in certain areas of the airplane for folks not to use their devices. But it's been known to cause problems. And one of the problems is it's just practical stuff like, let's say you have a scrambler in this room, an emergency happens. Guess what? We can't get out. I mean, we have a landline phone in here, but for years we didn't have a landline phone in these rooms. All we had is the students' cellular phones and the faculty's phones. In the same way, in businesses and churches, you don't have phones just everywhere around. And so it's a security thing is one of the main reasons of not having scramblers. But that's how attack is happening on our spectrum, is basically scrambling the signal to not be used. And by the way, there are apps out there on the Droid side and even on the hacked Apple side to do a scrambler type analyzer, to scramble signals right around your phone or right around your area with an app. Because it sends it through the Wi-Fi signal in your device to scramble the RF signal. Wireless protocol analyzer basically is kind of like Wireshark. And basically it captures all the traffic, analyzes the data, the ports, the IP address, source, destination, SSID. Some of them do geo tagging of where it's located on the map. And some of them actually, even if you don't have GPS, it does what's called triangularization coordination. So wherever you're located, like right here, it looks for the 3 separate cellular channels or cellular towers from your area, and it finds an approximate location of where you're at from those 3 towers. So it might be off by feet or yards or maybe a quarter mile at times, but it's in the region that you can get an approximate with that, even without GPS. NIC card for the wireless protocol analyzer to work must be in the correct mode for whatever the analyzer uses. Like an example, NIC cards could be in, say, passive mode, or they could be in open mode or active mode, okay, depending on the analyzer. Like I know NetStumbler uses passive, And if you don't have passive turned on for the NIC, it's not going to work. You're not going to get any data whatsoever. You're not going to get any information whatsoever. You can get the access points, but you're not going to get any data. So let's look at some of the 6 modes of a wireless NIC as far as it prefers to different ways a NIC card can be used. Master mode, where it acts as an access point. Manage mode, a client like your laptop or desktop or whatever that's connected to an access point. Repeaters, this is a device that just repeats the signal, and you can buy D-Link repeaters, you can buy Linksys repeaters, just repeats a wireless signal to go to more length within your area. Mesh mode, where basically you have a mesh of different connections together. Ad hoc mode, where you're just taking 2 devices and connecting them to Wi-Fi to talk to each other, to transfer data from a laptop to a phone, phone to a laptop. It's real popular. And then monitor mode. Basically, you're just monitoring what's going on. It's just actively listening is what it's called as well. You might have heard. Actively listening. Interference, when it comes to wireless LAN attacks, is where signals from other devices can disrupt wireless transmission. And here's some of those devices that can cause interference. We've already talked about a few: microwave ovens, elevator motors, copy machines, outdoor lighting, certain types of outdoor lighting. Like an example would be street lamps. Yeah, you know, street lamps, when they come on at night, how if you're right by one, when they come on, you'll hear it kind of go, you know, and it's different than just your porch light. It's got some electromagnetic stuff going on there, pretty powerful. That can cause some problems. Theft protection devices, like, say, for instance, you've got, say you've got around your perimeter one of those wireless fences for dogs. That would cause problems. Say you have, in the corner of our room up here, we've got a detector, infrared, that can cause problems with Wi-Fi. So any anti-theft type of devices can cause it, because they generally have some type of signals that they're putting out all the time. And then other Bluetooth devices, or even the Bluetooth device that's in the phone or in the laptop, can cause problems as well. So next time you guys have wireless problems at home, try this sometimes, and it does work. Turn off all your Bluetooth on your device you're on currently that's having problems. The other thing that causes problems a lot of times in homes is if you have a wireless sound system, or if you have a phone in your house that's wireless, like a home phone. It might be on the same gigahertz as your access point, and maybe on the same channel actually as your access point. And so you can change a channel of your access point to something else. And you do have access to do that. So say your channel on your access point is channel 11, you might change it to channel 6 or channel 5 or something like that to see if it helps that degradation and problem. So here we have an example of an attacker interference specifically on an access point. An attacker's flooding an access point with an RF flood to stop communications to any device on that network. It's the same as ping overflow or ping of death on a server through wired. This is the same concept through wireless. Just pushing data to overflow the access point RF interference to where it can't communicate to. And this can happen, by the way, this just showing an attacker device, but this could be done by devices in your house, by your microwave, by your garage door opener, by a certain remote, by a certain toy actually for kids that put out certain RF signals can do this as well. And you're like, what in the world's going on? It was working fine just 5 minutes ago. And you got this little toy car going by you. You turn it off. Oh, that's what it was. Attacks using access points, rogue access points. We've talked about that. Basically, coming into a system. We'll say we're in Starbucks right now, and the access point is called ATT. I come in, or you come in as a hacker, and we set up a rogue access point with our laptop, which is easily done, with the same name. And we might even add something on the end of it to make people even grab it better, which is maybe we'll put AT&T free or something like that. And people love the word free and they'll grab onto it. Other one is Evil Twins. Evil Twins is actually where the access point is the exact same in name, security, everything. The difference is the hacker will try to get closer to the people they're wanting to attack, because the way access cards work is it will glom onto the access point, even with the same name and security, that's closest to. It'll look for that first and grab onto it first initially. So they can even walk into a Wi-Fi hotspot, say that the user's already connected to AT&T, right? And we'll say it's on a web security, we'll say. And the hacker sets up web security access point, same name, but 10 feet closer than the one in the back of the restaurant or back of the Starbucks. Access points, the way they work is they're constantly pinging to see if that access point's alive and there. It just takes a second, a millisecond for that drop to happen. And when that drop happens, it drops the valid one and grabs onto the evil twin immediately without knowing any difference. The user doesn't know any difference. And then all data now can push through that. Rogue access point, unauthorized access between attacker, bypassing security, maybe set up a firewall, opening the network to attacks. Rogue access points can be used in businesses as well, because they can just be plugged into any Ethernet port on a wall, and without IT's knowledge, can do a lot of damage, because these access points can be set right next to a window, and most access points, even the cheapest ones, have at least a 30 to 50 yard range from that access point. Meaning folks in a parking lot, folks outside can get that access point, and if it's open and they get into that access point, it's just like them logging onto the network. They're in. They can get into, they can see stuff, they can browse your network files, they can browse, try to access Exchange, they can try to, do a whole bunch of stuff. Because what's happening is it's behind the firewall when it's plugged in immediately. And unless we go around periodically and look for, with whether it be NetStumbler or some other, there's tons of other tools out there that'll find rogue access points. You literally have to walk around. That's how you got to do it. There's no other way around it. And they do prop up here on campus too. And so, you're going to have them here, you're going to have them in businesses, you're going to have them everywhere. People are going to try to plug them in because they're tired. There's like, if I plug it in, I'm going to have my own, and I don't have to worry about getting connection, dropping connection, I have my own connection. Yeah, hey, guess what? That's all true. Everything you just said, that's all true. But they're not thinking about all the stuff that could happen, attack-wise, because of that connection they brought into the business. It could cause a lot of damage, a lot of theft. So here is an example of a rogue access point set up on a network. And notice how easy it is. You got your normal access, your normal network here. You got your firewall. You've got your server. You've got your computers connected to your server behind the firewall. And notice the rogue access points plugged right into the existing firewall, behind the firewall, protection of the firewall. And voila, the attacker's computer tries to get into the real firewall, the proper channels, is blocked, but can now access through the access point. So this is what times hackers will do, is they will bring in to the location, try to find an open port, plug it in, and you can buy access points that actually have power over wire. So the power they're getting is through the Ethernet cable. It's small enough, kind of ones that I passed around. The white one, actually, you can plug into an Ethernet on one side to get power over cable, because Ethernet does have a small amount of juice going through it. So they could literally just plug it in, say behind a desk, behind a chair, behind whatever, leave the building, and then have access to that network now, free and untethered, because it's behind the firewall. So again, detriment to the network, but all the more reason to do a walk around periodically for rogue access points in the network. Evil twin access point set up by attacker mimic the authorized access point. The attacker captures transmissions from the user's evil twin access point and tries to get passwords, much like the man in the middle attack, data activity. So vulnerabilities in 802.11. Originally, the committee recognized rightly that, you know, just like everything in networking and everything IT, there's going to be vulnerabilities. And so they began to implement several wireless security protections and started looking at ways to work with vendors and protections were vulnerable and led to multiple attacks. And so one of the ways that you can protect your wireless network from attacks is this way up here on the board, on the overhead. It's MAC address filtering. All of your access points, both home and commercial both, will allow you to do this. And there's even some campuses that have tried this, by the way. They have tried MAC address filtering. Basically, when you register as a student, you have to take your device to IT, and they write down your MAC address, and they put it in this list. They tried it. It's a nightmare. They tried it. And, you know, it works. It does work for the most part. But, you know, as we learned in here, you can do MAC spoofing and get ways around it. But anyway, the way it works on MAC address filtering is you limit the device accessing your access point by filtering only devices that have certain MAC addresses. And if you've had any devices on your network for any period of time, your access point knows those MAC addresses that are on there all the time. They already know them. So you literally wouldn't have to write them down and type them in. Most of your access points, if you go home tonight and look at your access point and activity and go into the MAC address filtering, it's already going to know all the ones that are on there. And you just turn on MAC address filtering and say, these 5 items are the only one allowed in, nothing else can come in. Done. It works. And especially for home users, say you have WPA security and MAC address filtering, you're pretty good to go. Okay, pretty secure there. Small offices, same thing. Small businesses, it works. MAC address filtering is used by nearly all wireless access point vendors. It permits or blocks. Vulnerabilities to MAC address filtering is addresses that are exchanged in unencrypted format. We know that's the case because you do any scanning of wireless through, say, Kismet, as an example, or even if you have on your laptop, on a wireless laptop, say you have running you know, a scanning software to scan the network, and like Wireshark, it's going to access the IP addresses of those access points or of those devices and the MAC addresses as well of those devices. So there are some vulnerabilities. The attacker can see the address of the approved device and substitute with his own. Managing large number of addresses, as you can imagine, say thousands of MAC addresses, would be nearly impossible to do. So it's not perfect, but it's built into every router, which most people don't use. And I say to students, try it, see if it works. It's not going to hurt anything to try it. And see if any degradation happens. There are some users, or some instances where I've seen degradation in MAC address filtering because it is one more thing the router's having to do on each data packet is go through this MAC address filtering. Okay, so because of that, it does cause and will cause a little bit of degradation of data flow. But if you're on true N, like if you're on wireless N at home anyway, or in a business, it's not going to be that big a deal. Okay. Doctors' offices, by the way, use this a lot. Hospitals, clinics will definitely use MAC address filtering on top of, you know, WPA2 enterprise. So in this example here, you can enable or disable MAC address filtering, and you can prevent PCs listed from accessing the wireless, meaning you can prevent a list of PCs to come in to your network from ever accessing again. Or you can permit only a certain list. So you can do a white list here by the permit only, or a black list for prevent. That makes sense? And there are cases where you would want to maybe do a prevent in areas where you've had some activity on, say, devices that have been trying to connect to your Wi-Fi, not really a person, but a device, you can block it through the prevent. I've done that before, and that works really well. It might just be some system out there, some tablet or some laptop that's constantly, or it's generally a device of some type though. The user doesn't control it. It's just trying to glom onto this access point called interference. You can block it. SSID broadcast. This is another misnomer. Sometimes people think if you turn off the SSID broadcast, which you can do, that will stop attacks. Not really. Because any attacker or hacker worth of salt is going to use a tool like Kismet or NetStumbler, and they're going to see all the SSIDs anyway, whether it's hidden or not. Okay, so they're going to see it, and so not really going to solve anything. In fact, what I've seen is the opposite. By turning off SSID broadcasting, it causes a lot of problems because some of these older devices, when I say old, I mean like 2 years old, okay, 3 years old, laptop, has a problem with SSID broadcasting turned off because the beaconing, if it's turned off on the broadcast and it doesn't, the NIC card doesn't see it, it'll drop it. I've seen that happen. Just drop the connection. It'll constantly be reconnecting, and manually to an SSID. And so I recommend keeping SSID turned on, never turning it off because of, now if you have all new devices, like within the last year or two, you're probably okay. But if you have any old devices around that have old NIC cards in it, a lot of those old NIC cards are going to drop that SSID if it's a hidden SSID. That makes sense? And so I usually just keep it on. I recommend students to keep it on all the time. And so this here is basically what's called an open system authentication. You might have seen it as you're setting up your router. Open authentication. Basically here we have SSID Sunshine 4511. Number 2, I want to connect to that Sunshine 4511, and then it says you're allowed to go in. So this should be an open, no secure connection, no security. You're just connected to it. You see an SSID, you connect to it. There's no web security. It's just open. And in some guest accounts, like on a DMZ port for businesses, it works great because you just tell them what the SSID is. They don't need to know any passwords, and doesn't matter what they do on that. It's not going to touch anything on your network. All they're going to get on that is port 80 and internet connectivity, and that's it. All right. And so great thing to use for guest accounts on businesses. Open system authentication is weak because it's only based on SSID to work. That's all you need. So really on attacking an SSID on an open system, most attackers don't do that because they already know if it's on an open system, more than likely there's not much it can do on the server side of it, but what they can do is on open SSIDs is they can it's easier to do man-in-the-middle attacks. It's easier to do rogue or mimicking the actual SSID and copying it and getting traffic through like a man-in-the-middle. Users can configure access points to prevent beaconing. I already mentioned not to do that. Older versions of Windows XP have added a vulnerability for this approach because it drops it if its SSID is hidden. Web security, all I want to mention about that is it's the first security protocol in network in wireless, and everything was encrypted in plain text and ciphertext, and very easy to crack on web. Very easy to crack. A lot of tools out there that shows you how to do it. Doesn't take long to crack a web key. And so basically the only encryption you have in here, really no encryption on this one, is a key. You have a certain key. Once you find out what that key is, you can crack it. And it doesn't take long with some of these utilities to find out what that key is, that secret key. Once you find the secret key, you can crack a web, usually with under a couple minutes. Web vulnerabilities violates cardinal rule of cryptography because it does have a detectable pattern in web security. But it was better and still is better than nothing. I do tell people that all the time.
if they say, I'm having a problem with WPA2 or WPA2 Enterprise or home with some of my devices, use web. Get a strong web key as you can think of for your password for that. It's better than nothing. Definitely. Don't leave it open. Definitely don't do that. Attackers basically use multiple tools for this. K-enable's one. Kismet, you can do a web attack and find the key fairly quickly. And what it uses in that bottom bullet, the XOR, which if you know anything about division, XOR is a leftover divisional statement. And so basically, after a period of time, it goes through an algorithm to find out what the leftover numbers are for this XOR to determine the key. And then it cracks the web. And so I'll just make mention on this screen. I want you to notice with your eyes the XORs for operation 1, 2, 3, and 4. XOR, you'll notice on operation 1 is the bottom ciphertext. Operation 2, bottom ciphertext B. And then operation 3, same. And then notice here, operation 4 found a match. Once it finds a match, that's the key that it uses to crack web. And it literally doesn't take, with the right utility, doesn't take long at all to do it. But again, and I want you guys to tell people this too. If they have and you will have problems sometimes with older device on WPA. I've seen it happen before. Or in WPA2. Just say, use web. Use web, get a nice, don't, make sure it's not your phone number, make sure it's not your address, make sure it's not your kid's name, make sure it's not your dog's name, stuff like that, common sense stuff, and use your web key. It can be a lot more secure than nothing. Solutions, the unified approach to WLAN security was needed, so IEEE and what's called a Wi-Fi alliance, which you'll see this Wi-Fi alliance, almost all access points and anything to do with